Hey everybody, Chris with MusiCrust here. It is so fucking hot. What a way to start this video. Oh my god, summer is so close to being over, and I'm so excited for that because it is just painful. So I'd like to gloss over something really quick. I'm actually not having any hits or shits this week because I think I'm going to revamp that system a little bit somehow. I feel like it doesn't really work in the way I do this because there's plenty of albums where I think they have a ton of hits. There's a lot of other albums that I think have like no shits or too many, or like vice versa. You can switch them up. It's hard to compile it all into one, and also it's just kind of a vague system. I feel like I was too forgiving in some areas and not forgiving enough in others, and there's a bit of bias. So I just feel like it's a bad system. I mean, obviously there's gonna be bias. It's a music review or first impressions, whatever you want to call it, but we're just gonna can that for now. On to the first album of the week. We had I Don't Think It Is by Say Anything. I haven't really listened to much of Say Anything, like their new stuff. I used to listen to a lot of their older tracks, not really an album. I like their self-titled album. Out of any of them, I can say I had the most out of that. As far as I know, this is their last album ever, as they have broken up, or at least they're on a hiatus. I'm not sure if it's a permanent thing or not, but they're not a thing anymore, and this is the last album they put out. I believe it was in 2017. That all being said, I have listened to Say Anything before, so I had a gist of what I was coming into, but it's actually a lot more lo-fi and emotional than what I expected, and I actually really enjoyed the mixing, the way it worked, how raw it felt. Like, it wasn't clean, it was all just poured out emotion. Max Bemis really killed it with the vocals. It's a very vocally focused album, and I think that's good for this album. I think it's good. The writing is fantastic, and even though it feels a bit rough around the edges, I think that appeals to this album. Each and every track on the track listing speaks well for itself, has a purpose, and yeah, I think it was good all around. That being said, it would just get good. I'm not going to put it any higher or lower. It wasn't outstanding. I thought everything was well-rounded, and even though it was a bit rough around the edges in terms of quality, it was good in terms of consistency, I would say. If that makes any sense. It's kind of a weird lo-fi album, but you might not really like if you prefer like a nice beat or pop music. It's a lot different than that. Unfortunately, we might not get another album like this for a long time. Hopefully Say Anything comes back eventually. The second album is another artist I have listened to a lot in the past. The next two, actually, all three of these are all artists I used to listen to in my high school days. So I have some familiarity with these. Retrograde by Crown the Empire is number 2. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to The Fallout, which is their sophomore effort. I loved that album, and unfortunately Retrograde falls flat in a lot of areas where I would just rather listen to The Fallout. Like, The Fallout is one of my favorite post-hardcore albums ever, and this just ain't it. That's all I gotta say, Chief. Just ain't it. It has a lot of things going for it, at least, but it's still a far cry. The second half of the album felt a lot more floaty and slow, which that's not like a weird thing for Crown the Empire to do, but the whole second half just kind of didn't have the same energy of the first half, and even the first half wasn't really that strong. I guess another way to put it is not that it's better or worse with the different flow, but it feels like two different parts of an album instead of one consistently conglomerated track listing, if that makes sense. It felt awkwardly paced in another way. There are some standout tracks, to be fair. The Hologram is easily my favorite in regards of everything else. It has a great chorus. It has a really neat chill bridge. There's some cool drum leads throughout. I just think it's a good track. Not many of them really captured that same energy that I expect out of Crown the Empire. So I give it a fair high okay, nothing more than that. I don't think it gets good. I feel like it's just so close to being a high quality album, but there's just so much wrong with it that I just don't really love it. I can't say that confidently that I like it more than anything they've ever put out, and I don't think I'd listen to it more than I did this time, except for Hologram. I just don't have a reason to go back to it. The third album is Greetings and Salutations by Less Than Jake. Less Than Jake is a ska band. Imagine punk rock plus high brass. If you don't know what ska is, that's what that is. It's a relatively niche genre, not super popular, but it's not bad. It's a genre I enjoy like modern ska music I enjoy quite a bit. Less Than Jake is one of the bigger ska artists that are still around and that still put out music. Similar to Say Anything, I actually haven't listened to a Less Than Jake album. I've listened to a lot of singles or tracks, but never a full album. So here we are, listening to our first one. I haven't heard anything off of this one. It's actually, I enjoyed it pretty consistently throughout, and I think this is one heck of a listen. Even if you don't know if you'd enjoy ska music, I would say give this band a shot. This would be your best example of entry level to that kind of music. And I think it's a shame that they don't get more recognition than they do, because like every track and every album, well, I guess I've only listened to one album, but like every time I hear this band, I think they're great. And I really wish that they had more recognition, which there's a lot of niche genres and artists that don't get recognized because they're not in the mainstream of things, and that's reasonable, but I'm just going to say right now, you should give them a shot. The band's full of amazing talent. It's great sound throughout this album. Don't knock it till you try it, I guess. That's all I'm going to say. Definitely deserves a good, possibly in the higher realm, but not quite. It was solid. Alright, number 4, we have Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins. This is an artist that I didn't realize there'd be so many tracks that I've already heard. Like Cherubrock, Today, and Disarm was like, I just had 3 oh shit moments with those 3 tracks. Like, oh shit, I've heard these before. And that was cool. I always like that. I think those are the most oh shit moments I've had in an album so far, as far as I know. I just never knew the name of those tracks, and I didn't realize I'd get to know them later in life as I am right now. I'm sure I have known a lot of people that listen to this artist, and obviously, they're pretty popular. Siamese Dream is a quality alternative rock album, and if you haven't heard it yet, definitely give it a shot. It's a very well-rounded track listing. It's a bit long for my tastes, but I think it was still pretty great, you know? And I will say, there's a lot of tracks that I didn't immediately fall in love with, except for maybe Disarm. Disarm was probably my favorite. But I can definitely say Nothing Here is bad. It's a good album all around, and it just has some great sounds to it. Definitely would get a highish good for me. Number 5 is Superunknown by Soundgarden, the longest album we have this week. And like most albums, I'm only listening to the original track listing. I'll only listen to a deluxe if it's like doesn't add an insane amount of content like some of the deluxes do. They just take too much time. Even the original here is a 70-minute runtime, which that's the second longest album I've listened to so far, I believe, on this challenge. Soundgarden's been around for a long time. They had a bit of a hiatus, quite a long hiatus, I believe, like a 15-year hiatus. This is one of the last albums, like the second to last, I believe, before that hiatus. This is the album that brought them to critical acclaim, and this is like one of the biggest grunge groups. While that's not really my thing, I can understand why people enjoy this kind of music and why it's so popular. Like, they have a very unique sound for what it's worth. Relatively consistent. I haven't heard a track that I straight up hated, which that's good. Although I will say, it actually made it harder for me to judge a lot of these tracks that are on here because of how long they are. Usually, you think you have more time to like think about things, but there's just so much going on in every track that they're just so long, and I won't say that I disliked that, although you should know by now that I'm not a huge fan of like super long tracks and albums. It was just hard to form opinions throughout. There's like 1 or 2 shorter tracks, but they're very short. The last track on the album is a 3-minute long track, and I actually didn't care for that one, so maybe it wouldn't work for them. I feel like it would benefit more with standard length music. Although, if they need the time to express themselves, I think that's fair. I think it did good for them, it's just not my style. It was hard to get into comfortably with the time, but that's, again, not really what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a creatively open album, and they did a good job on it. I'll give them props for that. It's just not something you would listen to thinking it's going to be an easy listen, I guess, to say. Not in terms of quality or how good they are, just in terms of how much time you have to dump into it, which that's fair, that's reasonable. And all things considered, I would give them an okay on a first listen. It might be higher on more. Like I said, I'm not a huge person that's into grunge music, and no offense to anybody that is. Maybe I just haven't listened to the right music yet, like in that genre. But they're good. The album's okay. I'll probably listen to a couple tracks more and see if I like it more then. And here we are again with a surprise pop album that I just really liked. We have Mad Love by JoJo. I actually did do the deluxe edition for this one because it only added 14 minutes for a 40-minute album to a 55-minute album. That's whatever. That's not bad. This is JoJo's 2016 pop effort. While she's not as big of a name as a lot of pop artists, her music is consistent and high quality, and I think she deserves more recognition, in my opinion. Like, it's all very, very nice sounding. I really enjoyed this album, honestly. Something that messed with me is the track I Can Only is censored when everything else isn't, and I just thought that was weird. Like, they censored the fucks out of that song, and then you hear them all throughout the rest of the album. I don't know if that was like a Spotify thing, but it was weird. Something I will say is that the mixing complements JoJo's voice really well. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel over the top. It still has a good place in the music. It's nothing ridiculous. JoJo's singing here is phenomenal. She has a very solid singing voice, and it's all spot on. They both work well together. And I gotta say that JoJo really puts a lot of effort into the vocals, it feels. There's a lot of emotion. It was just very enjoyable all around. I have to give it a low grade. It was just that good. It was very solid. I feel like I weight pop music a little higher than I do something that's harder to get into, like Soundgarden's album was. And it makes sense in a way because, like, pop music is supposed to be something you can enjoy on a first listen and then listen to over and over again because it's catchy. And then something like grunge is a little more tense, a little more, well, grungy, for lack of a better word. I don't know, maybe it's just that this is more my thing than grunge is, but it's just, I really enjoyed the album. That's all there is to it. This has actually been a full week of good music. Music that I pretty much enjoyed consistently. Our 7th album is actually an album by an artist who is putting out an album in 2 days as of uploading this. There's Really a Wolf by Russ. This is an album that really put Russ out there. He's always been with a rap group, as far as I know, after, researching, because I do a little bit of research every episode. But this is what blew him up as a solo artist. He's been doing his own mixing for years. He finally puts out his own solo record, and it's just, I can see why everybody liked it. It was really good. Russ's voice and lyrics, I think, are pretty solid. I'm pretty sure he did the mixing on this album. It's very well mixed. It's very well produced. And his lyrics feel like they have a bit of weight to them, and his vocals give off a good bit of emotion, and I think it feels like he really tried with this album. It's not just another run-of-the-mill rap LP that I don't really give a shit about. And some tracks really hit, like, important topics concerning, like, trust issues and domestic abuse. Obviously, those are hard topics to sing about or rap about, whichever outlet you look at, it's hard to do. I think it's portrayed pretty well here. Also, there's a lot of, like, slower tracks, stuff like Cherry Hill, I Want to Go Down With You. They're a nice change of pace. I don't think they're too out of place either. I think they're very nice to listen to. And they don't really detract from the album. They don't feel like they shouldn't be there. I actually found myself enjoying a lot of the lesser known and lesser listened to tracks on the album compared to the hits and the singles. The album is relatively well rounded, and even there's only one track I really didn't care for out of everything here. And there was 20 tracks, so that's a good standing in my opinion. There's Really a Wolf would definitely get a good here. Like I said, everything's just consistently solid around for 20 tracks. Like I said, I don't like longer albums, and that's fine. But I only disliked one track. Like, I really disliked one track. There's a couple I didn't care for, but there was one that I didn't really like. And that shows a lot of consistency, and I like that. I think it might have been better off if some of it got cut out, but even then, I enjoyed it, and that's all I can say. So props to Russ. I can say I'm a fan now, and I'm definitely going to be listening to his new album coming out in 2 days. I might even throw it as a special extra on the next week if I have time, which I probably won't. I was actually going to put the Eminem album that came out just out of nowhere on this list, but again, I didn't have time, so I'm actually listening to it right now. I was halfway through until I realized I need to record. This week we listened to 6 hours and 4 minutes of music, which overall brings us to 27 hours and 52 minutes. The longest album was Superunknown, as we went over before. The shortest album is Greetings and Salutations. My favorite album was probably Mad Love. It was just very good. My least favorite was probably Superunknown, but that being said, it wasn't bad. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about week 5. My name is Chris under MusiCrust. Thank you guys for watching. See you next week. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you later.